When success felt dangerous for the first time. There is a moment in childhood when desire meets reality, a moment when wanting more touches the emotional limits of the environment. For some children, success is celebrated. For others, it is quietly corrected, not with words, but with atmosphere. A change in a parent's tone, a subtle withdrawal of warmth, a look that says, "Don't go too far." And the child understands immediately, not intellectually, emotionally. In Jungian psychology, the child does not interpret life through reason. The child feels truth before it is ever explained. So when success disrupts emotional safety, the psyche learns something crucial. Expansion is risky. This is how fear of success is born, not from failure but from connection. You may not remember the exact moment. Most people don't. Because these lessons are not stored as memories, they are stored as patterns. Perhaps you were praised, but also made responsible for others' emotions. Perhaps your intelligence made a parent insecure. Perhaps your independence created distance instead of closeness. Perhaps being too capable meant being less protected. So the child adapts, not consciously, instinctively. Jung explained that the psyche always chooses what preserves belonging, even if it costs authenticity. And so, slowly, a rule is formed inside. If I grow too much, I may lose love. This rule does not disappear with age. It matures with you, it changes clothes, but it keeps the same voice. In adulthood, it sounds like hesitation, like procrastination, like a strange emptiness after achievements, like anxiety right before things finally work. You tell yourself you are tired, unmotivated, undisciplined. But the truth is deeper. A younger part of you is still protecting an old bond. Jung called this phenomenon psychic loyalty, the unconscious commitment to early emotional contracts, even when those contracts no longer serve us, even when they hurt us. This is why many people unconsciously stop themselves just before success becomes real. They miss deadlines, they doubt their readiness, they lose interest at the edge of fulfillment. Not because they don't want success, but because success still feels like separation. For the inner child, being visible once meant being alone, and the psyche remembers. What makes this fear so confusing is that it hides behind virtue, humility, modesty, patience, being low profile. But beneath these masks, there is often a terrified child asking, "If I shine, will I still be loved?" Jung believed that whatever remains unconscious governs our lives as fate. So long as this fear stays unnamed, it controls decisions quietly. You choose safety over expansion, familiar struggle over unfamiliar freedom, predictable limitation over uncertain possibility, not because you lack courage, but because courage once cost you connection. This is not a flaw, it is an adaptation, and every adaptation once made sense. The tragedy is not that the child learned this rule. The tragedy is that no one ever told them the rule no longer applies. As adults, we rarely question why success feels heavy, why recognition creates anxiety, why progress brings guilt. We assume something is wrong with us. Jung would say nothing is wrong as something is unresolved. The psyche is not broken, it is loyal. Loyal to a time when success threatened belonging. And until that loyalty is gently examined, success will always trigger resistance. This is why fear of success feels irrational, because it does not belong to the present moment. It belongs to a child who once believed, "Staying small keeps me safe." Understanding this changes everything. Because fear loses power when it is seen, not judged, not forced away, seen. When you realize that your hesitation is not weakness but memory, compassion replaces self-criticism. And compassion is the beginning of integration. This is where Jungian healing truly begins, not with motivation, not with discipline, but with listening. Listening to the part of you that learned to survive by shrinking. And asking softly, what did success cost you back then? The answer to that question is the doorway to freedom. Perfeito, continuando exatamente no mesmo ritmo, profundidade e tom. The shadow of success, guilt, loyalty, and the fear of outgrowing others. There is a quiet tension that appears when success becomes possible. It is not excitement, it is not joy, it is something heavier, a subtle emotional resistance that feels like guilt without a clear reason. In Jungian psychology, this sensation does not come from the present. It rises from the shadow. Carl Jung described the shadow as everything we were not allowed to be, not because it was wrong, but because it threatened our emotional environment. For many children, ambition was dangerous, not openly forbidden, but silently discouraged. You may have learned that succeeding meant surpassing someone you loved, that growing meant leaving someone behind, that becoming more created imbalance. And so your psyche did something intelligent. It hid your power, not erased it, protected it. This is how success becomes shadowed, not dark, but burdened. As an adult, when you approach success, the shadow awakens, not as confidence, but as discomfort. You feel undeserving. You feel uneasy receiving praise. You feel the urge to minimize your achievements. This is not humility. It is loyalty. Loyalty to a system where equality was preserved by limitation. In childhood, belonging often depends on sameness. To be different can mean to be isolated. So the psyche learns, do not rise too high. Jung observed that people often sabotage themselves not out of fear of failure, but out of fear of separation. Success threatens the unconscious bond to family roles, identities, and emotional hierarchies. If you were the responsible one, success threatens your usefulness. If you were the quiet one, success threatens your invisibility. If you were the caretaker, success threatens your availability. And so guilt appears, not moral guilt, emotional guilt. A feeling that says, if I grow, someone else will shrink. If I succeed, someone else will suffer. If I heal, I will no longer belong. This guilt is irrational, but deeply persuasive, because it was formed before logic. Jung believed that the psyche values loyalty over happiness until awareness intervenes. So you remain loyal to old suffering patterns, even when they limit you. You delay, you distract yourself, you choose comfort over expansion, and you call it patience. But inside, something knows. This is why success can feel strangely lonely even before it happens. Because the unconscious imagines isolation as its price. What makes this so powerful is that the shadow does not speak clearly. It speaks through emotion, a heaviness in the body, a loss of motivation, a sudden doubt about your worth. And because these sensations feel personal, you assume they are truth. Jung warned that when the shadow is ignored, it rules from behind. You think you are making conscious choices, but you are responding to unconscious fears. The shadow says, who will you be without your struggle? Who will need you if you are fulfilled? Who will stay if you no longer shrink? These questions are not meant to stop you. They are meant to be answered. But most people never hear them clearly. Instead, they turn away. They return to what is familiar, to patterns that keep relationships stable, even if they keep the self small. This is why some people repeat the same level of success over and over. They reach a threshold and stop, not because they cannot go further, but because further feels unsafe. In Jungian terms, the ego resists individuation when it threatens belonging. Individuation, the process of becoming one's true self, always requires leaving behind old identities, and leaving feels like loss. So the psyche delays it, not forever, but until awareness grows stronger than fear. The shadow does not want destruction. It wants integration. It wants to know, can I succeed and still be loved? Can I grow and still belong? Can I shine without abandoning others or myself? Until these questions are consciously addressed, success will always feel heavy. But once they are seen, something shifts. Guilt begins to soften, resistance loosens, the psyche starts to renegotiate its old contracts. This is not an instant transformation, it is a gradual reorientation. The shadow does not disappear, it changes role, from saboteur to guide. Because within the shadow of success lives something essential, your true power, waiting to be carried without shame. When the inner child no longer experiences success as loss, healing the fear of success does not begin with confidence, it begins with safety. According to Jungian psychology, no part of the psyche resists growth without a reason. Resistance is always protective before it is limiting. The inner child does not fear success itself. The inner child fears what success once meant: loss of closeness, loss of approval, loss of emotional equilibrium. So healing does not come from forcing yourself forward. It comes from turning inward and listening. The question is not, How do I stop sabotaging myself? The question is, what part of me believes that succeeding will cost too much? Jung believed that the unconscious heals through relationship, not command. The ego cannot dominate the psyche into wholeness. It must dialogue with it. This is where many people go wrong. They try to overpower fear with motivation. They shame hesitation. They pressure themselves to be stronger. But the psyche does not respond to force. It responds to recognition. When the inner child is finally seen, not corrected, not rushed, something profound happens. The body softens. The anxiety loses urgency. The resistance begins to speak instead of sabotage. This part of you is not irrational. It is young. It remembers a time when success meant exposure, when visibility meant vulnerability without protection. So the healing movement is gentle. You begin by noticing your reactions to success without judgment. You notice the tightening before opportunities, the fatigue after progress, the urge to disappear when things go well. And instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" you ask, "What feels unsafe right now?" This simple shift changes the entire inner dynamic, because fear loses power when it is allowed to exist. Jung taught that integration happens when opposites are held together, not when one eliminates the other. You do not destroy fear. You include it. You let the fearful child know something new, that adulthood is no longer dependent on conditional love, that growth no longer threatens survival, that success does not mean abandonment. This reassurance is not intellectual. It is emotional. It comes through repetition, not insight alone, through choosing presence over self-attack, through celebrating progress quietly, without pressure, through allowing success to feel neutral before it feels joyful. Many people expect healing to feel empowering immediately, but true healing often feels calm first. Neutrality is the first sign of safety. When success no longer triggers panic, even if it does not yet bring excitement, something has already shifted. The inner child begins to trust, and as trust grows, something remarkable happens. Energy returns. Not the frantic energy of proving, but the grounded energy of permission. You stop pushing yourself forward. And yet, you move forward more easily, because the part that once pulled you back is no longer fighting. Jung believed that when unconscious material is integrated, it releases psychic energy that was previously used for defense. This is why healing feels like relief rather than effort. The psyche no longer needs to split itself between desire and protection. You are no longer torn between wanting and fearing. You begin to experience success not as a threat, but as expansion. Not as separation, but as continuity. And this changes how you relate to the world. You no longer shrink to preserve harmony. You allow others to manage their own emotions. You stop confusing loyalty with self-denial. This does not make you selfish. It makes you whole. The healed inner child does not need you to stay small to stay safe. It only needs to know that you are present, that you will not abandon yourself, even when you grow. This is the moment when success stops feeling like betrayal and starts feeling like home, when success becomes a return to yourself. In Jungian psychology, true success is never about becoming someone else. It is about becoming more whole. When the inner child no longer associates success with danger, something quiet but profound takes place. The nervous system relaxes. The psyche stops resisting. Life no longer feels like a battlefield between desire and fear. Success stops asking you to betray your past. It invites you to include it. Carl Jung believed that healing does not erase childhood wounds. It integrates them into consciousness, where they lose their power to govern from the shadows. This is why fear dissolves not through force but through understanding. When you recognize that your hesitation was once protection, shame softens. When you see that your resistance was loyalty, compassion emerges. And when compassion replaces self-judgment, the psyche finally feels safe enough to move forward. At this point, success no longer feels like separation. It feels like continuity. You do not leave your inner child behind. You carry them with you, not as a burden but as wisdom. Growth stops being an escape, it becomes an expression. You no longer need to prove anything. You no longer need permission. You move because movement feels natural again. Many people wait their entire lives for success to feel safe. But safety does not come from achievement. It comes from reconciliation with the parts of ourselves that once had to choose survival over expansion. This reconciliation is not loud. It is intimate. It happens in moments of recognition, in reflections that gently reorganize the inner world, in insights that settle rather than excite. And when this inner alignment begins, something curious occurs. You start seeking depth rather than answers, understanding rather than motivation, integration rather than shortcuts. This is often the moment when people feel drawn to go deeper, not because they are broken, but because they are ready. Ready to explore the unconscious patterns that shape them, ready to understand their inner architecture, ready to continue the dialogue with themselves beyond surface awareness. The journey does not end here, it widens. And when you walk it with curiosity instead of pressure, success no longer stands in front of you as a test. It walks beside you, quietly, naturally, as a reflection of who you are becoming. Not more than others, just more yourself.